Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have an absolutely phenomenal guest today. Our FM influencer today is a childhood hero of mine, Gary Hall Sr. Gary, thank you so much for being with us today.
John, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This is an amazing experience. We got a chance to meet for the first time a couple of weeks ago. It's incredible for me, so thank you. He was the flag bearer for the U.S. Olympic team, which I believe not many swimmers have ever done that. Is that correct, Gary?
It's a pretty small group of two of us, Michael Phelps and myself. I love being in any group with Michael Phelps. But I was the first
you're the first then.
Swimmer to carry the flag in the opening ceremony in 1976. And Michael was the second, who was named in 2016. So,
wow.
Yeah, great honor.
And you and I have something very much in common, which is our coach, Doc Councilman, who is absolutely a phenomenal person. So it's funny, a while back, I was listening to some of your shows and I saw my head going up and down and agreeing with almost everything he said. And I finally, wait a minute, we were trained by the same person, so that would make sense. So there's a lot of agreement on what we see. You have, if I'm right, you have 3 Olympic gold medals yourself and a son that has an Olympic gold medal. Is that correct?
Actually, I have 3 medals. I wish they were gold, but they're not. 2 of them are silver and 1's bronze. And my son has 10 Olympic medals. He was in 10 Olympic races and walked away with 10 Olympic medals. So that was pretty cool. I swam in 6 different Olympic races and ended up with 3. So I was 3 for 6 and he was 10 for 10.
Wow, that's amazing. And I can't imagine what your trophy case must look like at home. Holy cow. Incredible.
Dusty, very dusty.
Dusty, yeah, mine too. Doesn't have the same medals in there though. You had told me earlier when we were talking that it was great to be there and actually compete, but even better to watch your son.
It was. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than having a son or daughter, and not even at the Olympics, just watching them do well in competition. It's a goosebump moment for parents, and that's what we live for, is our kids. And I tried hard not to relive my experiences for my son, so I stayed back. I didn't coach him, but
and that could be a tough thing to do, right? Especially when you're as knowledgeable as you are.
It can be. And some parents don't have any option. I mean, there's no other coach. They have to coach their kids and be parents too. That's a tough role to do both. I was fortunate, and it was hard enough just being a dad, but I had great coaches that we were able to find for Gary to help him in his career. I was glad to let them coach.
I'm hoping that I have the same wisdom. I'm an old dad, so I have an 8.5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I hope I have the same wisdom not to coach them, but just to open doors for them. Now, you have a total of 6 children. You also just kind of going along, so you have a whole right, 3 girls and 3 boys. That must be incredible. Now, later on, after you've done this, you had a career as an eye surgeon. Can you just really quick mention what you were talking about with the eyewear and what's so important for coaches with that?
I was an ophthalmologist for 25 years in Phoenix. Arizona has 300 days of sunshine a year. Saw a lot of UV damage to the eye. Treated a lot of it. Some of it's treatable, some of it's not. Some of it can actually lead to blindness. And there are 5 major eye diseases caused by UV. Some by blue light as well. Yeah. Anyway, along that path, I developed a rating system for sunglasses. Never been adopted. The sunglass industry has really stonewalled it. It's a great system. It gives consumers a full understanding of the UV protective value of sunglasses. Right now, you don't get that, unfortunately. So the industry's kept the consumers pretty much in the dark, so to speak, about how much UV protection they're really getting, making them believe that they're actually getting more protection than they are. So that's a process. I mean, that's been a project of mine. And along the way, I've written a couple of times to coaches. Swimming coaches are particularly high risk because, especially if you're coaching in the southern United States or anywhere where there's sun, bright sun, it's not just being outside and on the deck for those many hours, But because we're right next to water, and water reflects up to, depending on the time of the day, can reflect up to 50% more UV into the face or into the eye.
So
So it can,
lifeguards would have an issue as well, I guess, outdoor lifeguards and
lifeguards are at risk. Anyone who works outdoors really is at risk, um, and particularly during the middle day hours of the day. So it's really easy to prevent the eye disease that are UV related, and that's just where good protective sunglasses, 100% UV protection, wraparound frames, fairly tight fitting. But a lot of the damage doesn't come from above. You'd think the sun's up there and it's coming down. It actually comes from below. It bounces, reflects off the surface of the deck or the water or snow, whatever you're standing on. And that's where the danger is coming from above, from down below.
and right, then you see a lot of people getting snow blindness when they're skiing and things like that. Right, that's all
Yeah.
bouncing off of that.
But if anyone out there has any interest, you can always reach me. You can email me at garysenior@theraceclub.com. And I'll tell you the type of sunglass lens you should be wearing and the type of style. There isn't just one company or one brand. There's lots of good brands out there. But you want to make sure that you protect your eyes well, particularly from the sides and down below. You want to have a fairly tight fitting frame.
It almost seems like a must have for a lot of people. Oh, I don't know if I can afford a more expensive glass or something like that. You couldn't afford not to get the right one if you're in this business, right? It's one of the commercial needs.
It doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, some of the most protective sunglasses are not expensive.
Now you're the CEO for the race club at this point, right? Your son started it, and you've taken it over from there, and you're doing some amazing things. We're going to find out a little bit more about the race club in just a moment. But can you tell us a little bit, just take us back and when you were a kid, and tell us what you got started, how you got started into swimming.
I was raised in California, in Orange County, a little town called Garden Grove. There were a lot of clubs that were popping up in Orange County at that time, one of which was founded by an Olympic diver named Sammy Lee. He was a physician. Parents were born in Korea. They brought him to the United States when he was very little, grew up in LA. He started this club to help, train divers and to bring swimming in as well. It was the Sammy Lee Swimming and Diving School in Anaheim, California. And that's where I started. I was 7 years old. My path was anything but linear. It was very up and down. I had a great first run until I was 10. I went downhill, almost quit when I was 14. And then I discovered a new coach and came back when I was 15 or 16 and ended up making the Olympic team a year later. So
how important was that coach?
He was everything. A lot of people know that the first coach that really got me excited about swimming again was John Urbanchek, who was
he's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a very famous. Even to this day, he claims Gary L. Sr. was my first, good swimmer that I coached when I came to the United States as a coach. He was born in Hungary, went to University of Michigan, comes from grad school to California, starts coaching the Sammy Lee Swim School, and there I am. And he came to me at the right time. Unfortunately, I didn't get to train with John more than just a year because he was in a different district in school and I couldn't transfer to his school. He wouldn't let me. So I had another coach that came along who was also brilliant, and his name was Flip Dar. He's no longer with us, but he's in the Hall of Fame, and he's coached, I don't know how many Olympians he coached, many. Shirley Babashoff, Steve Gregg, the Furness brothers, John Mickinen, all Olympians.
John Mickinen, he was a roommate of mine in the National Sports Festival. Just a real gentleman. Yep. Yeah. Outstanding person.
And Flip coached him as well. But Flip was the guy that really took me to the Olympics. And then from there, it was Doc really that took me from that point on.
What made you go to Indiana and with Doc Councilman?
There were two schools that really dominated swimming in those days, unlike today where there's many schools that have great swimming programs. There was a clear difference in the level of swimming at the two top schools, which were Indiana University and University of Southern California. Better coaches, Peter Dalen, Doc Councilman.
Mm.
great coaches. There were other great coaches, but they didn't coach collegiately. They coached at the club level. George Haynes, Don Gambrell. So we didn't have the option of going to those guys in college. Doc was very persuasive.
Yeah, you meet him, you want to go and be with him.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard sell. He just
Right.
you got to know him and said, "Wow, this guy knows a lot, and he's really interesting. He's smart,
And he cares more
And,
about you than your swimming, which is incredible.
That's right. Yeah, it turned out to be a great decision. Had a great 4 years. We won the national championships all 4 years I was there. In case there are any Trojan fans out there, we beat USC each year.
How do you feel like your experience with swimming, when you went into go into being a doctor? How did your experience in swimming impact your future career?
First and foremost, I think I went into medicine because my father was a physician and my grandfather was a physician. There was no pressure at all from those guys for me to become a physician. But I think I felt more of a sense of security. There was no professional swimming at the time. You couldn't make a living. And so beyond college, there really wasn't much of an opportunity to swim competitively. I don't know that I would have ever gone back and gone to medical school if I'd taken 4 or 5 or 6 years focusing on professional swimming. I don't think I would have gone back and gone to medical school. Had a good run, 25 years of it. I felt that was enough. I just felt it was the right time, it was the right age. I was only 55 when I decided to become a swimming coach. Here I am 15 years later, almost 70, and I still feel like, yeah, I've still got I'm learning every day. And I'm still.
It's funny. Yeah. I hear you say that 70 word, and I'm 58 now, and I think we're about somewhere around 10 years apart or so. I remember seeing you on TV when I was 10 years old. I was watching you guys really, beat everybody up in the Olympics. When you get to know you, you don't seem like that age, that number, that 70, right? You just seem like you're just getting started again. It's fun and exciting. To talk with you, and all the incredible ideas you have are just amazing. What does swimming generally mean to you?
Since I was 7, I actually learned to swim. I think I was 2. My dad taught me. It's always been a big part of my life in some way. Even when I was practicing medicine, I did 10 years. I was a triathlete, and I managed the Phoenix Swim Club, which was a big operation in Phoenix. We had our Olympic pool. It's always been part of my life. And my son, all of my 6 kids swam. My wife was a swimmer. Her brother was an Olympian. Her dad was an NCAA swimming champion. It's like chlorine is in the Hall blood and bloodline. And I still swim. In fact, when we're done with this, I'm going over and I'm going to be swimming. So I missed the week because I was busy coaching last week. To me, it's a form of relaxation and good exercise. And you can do it for life. There are many sports that have 100 and up age group. Swimming is one of those sports, so it says a lot about it.
It says a lot about the people that are in it that still want to race at that age.
Yeah.
Once they're in that community, and this is what's such a big deal. It's not about just who was the fastest person ever. Every community member is valuable to us. And we appreciate their contributions. Sometimes they're not the fastest swimmer out there, but that's not what it's about.
No, not at all. They're very competitive people in the Masters, don't get me wrong, but it's a social event and people love to go and interact with others, and they're all passionate about the sport. It's not about winning or losing here. It's about having fun, getting healthy, and just enjoying life.
What we've done here is we have what's called the cornerstones of athletic performance. We built this originally from some of the information that I learned from Doc Councilman. One of the things that we learned is that fuels like sleep, hydration, nutrition, and oxygen, almost like consumables, and they would flow through one of the 3 energy systems, which would create either endurance or speed or explosivity. And from there, it would go over, so those fuels would run through there, and then over to strength and flexibility. That's the muscular system that's going to contract using that energy. It's going to contract around the skeletal system, which is technique, how you move your bones. And then the bones get you to where you want to go. And the whole question is, which is the brain, right? The whole question is, do you know where you want to go and how to get there? And then synergy would be like racing, how you put it all together, right? How you bring those things together. In your opinion, with all your background here, what do you see as one of the most significant areas?
I wrote a book this summer during COVID, and in that book, in one of the first chapters, I talk about the science. I really described the four basic sciences that intersect in the sport of swimming. And those
That
four
was in your FINA presentation too, wasn't it?
it was in the FINA
That
presentation
was
as
excellent.
well.
Got it.
And those four basic science really are the same ones that cover the same ones that you have here on your slide. And what are those? Well, the physiology, which is really your energy systems,
Right.
as well as strength, flexibility, and injury management, which is also part kinesiology, or the body movements, and technique can be lumped into that as well. Then you have physics, which is also part of technique. Fuels really goes along with physiology and developing the right nutritional elements that are going to help you perform at the highest level. And the fourth basic science that intersects in the sport of swimming is the neurological sciences, or what controls the neuromuscular response, the brain controlling the body and the movements of the body, which is to me one of the real, I think, frontiers of our sport. We haven't really learned as much about how our brains can control our bodies.
I noticed that particular thing, that we have so much crossover here on how we perceive that swimming and the different aspects of it. What would you say one of the more challenging areas for you were? I mean, here you are, won 3 Olympic medals. What was one of the challenging areas for you?
For me, was probably the inequity of when children, when they're going through the sport, mature physically. In other words, when they go through puberty, they're going to get stronger, the hormonal changes, and there's a lot of improvement that comes along with that strength. Without the right technique or training, that is very short-lived. But I was a very late bloomer and very small. When I started my sophomore year in high school, I weighed 115 pounds.
You were so slender. I remember the pictures.
I was a runt. I was a small guy. And I got beat a lot by people that I used to be when we were 10 or 11. I could beat them. We were more evenly sized. When they got big and they could beat me, it was very discouraging. So for me to understand that at that age was hard. You're not going to enjoy every moment of the sport, but overall, you got to have fun. You got to have fun. If you don't have fun doing this, then it's not going to be something you should do, because life is way too short. And I'm not saying you have fun every single day. It's hard. It's a very, very difficult sport. That doesn't mean it's not fun. It can be fun and hard too. I always tell every swimmer, John, that at the end of their career, I'm not going to judge them by how many Olympic medals they won, how many world records they set, or even national or state or local records. It's not about that. It's about how well did you perform in your championship meet. Every season, or every chapter, I call season, chapter of your life, there's a championship meet where you set a goal to swim at a certain speed. And how often in your career did you make those goals happen? And if you make those goals happen, regardless of what level you end up reaching, doesn't matter, you're a champion. When you do succeed, or when you do set goals and you make those goals, guess what? You have fun. You enjoy it.
You feel that achievement, right? That you're actually progressing and moving forward.
That's right.
When you're a swimmer and how successful you got, and the fact that it wasn't success immediately, right? There was ups and downs, and then you got there, and then you went to your next career, right? Being an ophthalmologist, and again, right, up it goes, and now in what you're doing now. So these 3 major phases that you've explained so far is, continuous success of getting somewhere and digging in. And that's a great thing, because a lot of people, they stop when they don't have success, and that's not the way to go. I think you want to have success, but you have to dig too.
You have to dig, and you can't be afraid, especially as you're transitioning from being focusing on being a swimmer to something else. You got to take a leap of faith. You don't know if you're going to be good in that. You got to say, okay, I'm going to try. I may not be as good doing whatever I designed to do as my career as I was as a swimmer, but I'm going to find out if I can be anywhere close or maybe better. But you have to be willing to take that leap of faith. And a lot of people aren't. They want to clutch onto something they're pretty good at, and they don't want to let go. You're not going to be able to retire what you earn in sport swimming. You're going to have to do something else. What is that something else?
And from that swimming career, you can learn the systems that can make you succeed, and then you apply them to another, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So if you're just in to try to, make a giant living, that's not what it's going to be about. But as you go along, you can find incredible ways that has helped you to gain success. So I want to talk right now about our companies right there. We're in the same swimming community. We're helping and supporting. I want to show a little difference on how the two of us differ in the way we work, because I think they're both very valuable. But a lot of times people don't understand the differences. They're just a swimming company. No, we're very different. So I'm going to share again my screen here. There's 4 levels the way we look at it. And the first level is the scientists, right, that are researching new aspects, finding out things that we don't already know, and contributing to that data and that information base. Next step is we have these where we're interpreting the research, presenting it in usable ideas, and we're helping take that research and that science and delivering it to the community. Now, we both started pretty much the same way with the same source of information, which is why we have a lot of agreements on what things should happen, because it came from Councilman originally. He had I know he put out a book, and that book, a number of books, but one of them was converted into, I think, 57 languages, distributed worldwide. So the basis of science for swimming really kind of started there, if I'm correct. And then from there, though, we had to define our company as an educational company. We're not a research company. And so what we do is we take that research and we build avatars so you can see it in different ways and present it so that people can understand it and use it. Then you have coaches that are applying it in the workout on the deck to the swimmers and getting it into the water with those swimmers. And so what we do is we build tools for presentation and things like that so we can get it down into that group. Now, what you guys do, the step 1, and you also do step 2, where you're doing the actual scientific research. Then you actually work with the swimmers as well. You actually do, and you have such a unique aspect of looking at the research that I'd love to have people understand what's different between your research and other researchers. How do you do that?
Well, I think starting from Doc, as you said, who highly influenced both of us, very inquisitive as I am. And even as when I was in pre-med, I was a physics major in Indiana University for 2 years before switching over to go into medicine. But the physics, one, I was always intrigued by it. And two, it was kind of like problem solving. And the way I look at a swimmer is here's a problem, how do you solve it? How do you solve the problem to make the swimmer faster? And there's kind of 2 aspects of a swimmer's success. One is in the training or the development of the energy systems, the physiology and the anatomy. And there's the other is the technique. And today, most coaches are really focused on the training. And there's been very small amount of energy focused on the technique. And yet, one could make a pretty good argument that swimming is the most technique-sensitive sport in the world, more than, technique is important in every sport, golf, tennis, the high jump, the long jump, running, cycling. Technique matters in all those sports. With poor technique, you're not going to do well. And why is it more important in swimming? Well, because we're in water. With a density of 800 times with air, when we make a mistake in the pool, in the water, we pay a bigger price. We pay a much bigger price than we do in air. And the forces of drag, which I call the number 1 enemy of the swimmer, are very compelling in this medium that we're in. Not every sport's in that medium. In fact, some are, like sailing, water sports. they have to contend with the drag too, and that's what the sport of sailing is largely about. How do I get the drag down so my boat will go faster? Well, we have the same issues, in fact, even more so. Even though we're traveling at lower speeds, we don't have to go very fast. So
our body is really the vehicle, right?
The body is the vehicle. We don't have anything else to help us. It's our hands and our feet providing the propulsion, and then how we shape our body to reduce drag in all of our motions, which are continually changing, that determine how fast we are. There's three, Newtonian laws that really determine how good a swimmer gets. And those are laws defined in the 1600s by Sir Isaac Newton. What is the force of propulsion? What is the force of drag? And how well do we take advantage of the law of inertia? Those three are it. I mean, there's a lot of other laws that can be applied to swimming. Those three are basically what determines a good or not so good swimmer.
They're the primary factors, that's right.
They're the primary factors. And so fluid mechanics, which is a study of, flows in water and so forth, are a derivative of Newtonian mechanics. So they're really talking about the same thing with some, various differences, because the flow of the water can affect, which it does, affects a swimmer. I decided, if I'm going to do the sport, that I want to be involved on the technique side for a couple of reasons. Number one is, I feel as if, and I still do this, I still feel this way, we live in the dark ages of swimming in terms of technology.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Yeah. What is available out there in the world that's been applied in other sciences, in other fields, in other sports, we are living in the dark ages. We are not taking advantage of the technology that's out there. And I have the three-pronged test. When it comes to science and using research or technology, you have to pass all three parts of the test, or as far as I'm concerned, the research is useless. Number one is, do you trust the technology? Do you trust that it's accurate? In other words, whatever you're doing to do the testing, is it giving you the right information? Not always the case. And when you read other researchers and what they're doing, they may or may not be doing it correctly. You don't know because you weren't there to see them do it. You don't know exactly, what's accurate, what's not accurate. So you have to trust them a little bit. And I don't like doing that. In this case, I'm a little bit more hands-on. I like to do things myself to know they were done correctly and that I can trust the data coming out is real. The second is, okay, now we get the data out. Are we analyzing it correctly? I remember, and as a physician, I knew cardiologists who could take an EKG of your heart and diagnose problems that I could never see on the EKG. They could read your EKG way better than I ever could because they had years of experience analyzing these electrical patterns and knew exactly what they meant.
And then some of them have that insight, right? And some of them, even though they've been there years, still don't have the insight, right?
Some have a knack for it and some don't. And you have to have an analytical mind. You have to be able to dig. Okay, here's data. Okay, that's fine. Here's a test. Great. What are you going to do with that? And extracting that information, the right information, and interpreting correctly is not that easy. It has to be done correctly. Otherwise, you can come to the wrong conclusion, given all the right data. You can make a totally wrong assumption and come up and recommend a swimmer does something completely wrong, just based on analyzing something incorrectly. So that's the second prong. The third prong is, okay, you got good testing, good research. The information coming out is accurate. You think you're interpreting it correctly. Now you have to change something in the swimmer. Can the swimmer learn to do that? In other words, can they apply what you're teaching them? And that's a tough question too, because not every swimmer can. Some do it better than others. And it's not a black and white sport. So it's not like everything's going to work the same way in every swimmer, right? Because there's so many variables. So it's not a simple three-pronged test, but in the end, I do the research because I want to trust the information and I can trust myself better than anybody else. Two, I know the technology I'm dealing with,
Mhm.
and I select it out. I'm not just, randomly trying something. And second, I feel after years, and it doesn't happen overnight, that I'm able to analyze the results better and have a better handle. And I still keep improving. And we have 4 different technologies we use. We use a velocity meter where we're measuring velocity, acceleration, deceleration at every 0.02 seconds, synchronized to video. And I have learned more about the sport of swimming through that technology than anything else, including Doc. That has just made me understand a lot more about what makes swimmers swim fast or not. And then we have a pressure meter where I measure the power or the pressure of the hand, not the force, but the pressure, which is related to the force. Mm-hmm. And we synchronize that, and we also measure the body rotational speeds. Very important, what I call coupling motion, kinetic energy that's used to increase power. And we've been able to look at that, and it's taken me a couple of years to figure that out, to understand what's good, what's not good. These are new metrics, John. We're looking at new parameters that nobody's looked at before. So we have to figure out what's normal, what's good, what's bad, and where does this 10-year-old or 12-year-old, 16-year-old fit in compared to others. So it's all been and continues to be a work in progress.
You're able to have this very clear view of, I want to get this to plug this into this puzzle. And as you find these pieces, I think your insight is so valuable playing a part in this versus a lot of times just a researcher that's out there trying to get something to research because that's what they need to do. In your case, you're just plugging pieces in and you can see the results. It's amazing what you guys can do with swimmers.
Thank you. And I don't have an interest in publishing. A lot of people in the academic world, that they live for that. Publishing, builds their fame and reputation, ego, whatever. I'm not. I check my ego at the door. If I want to figure out if a certain hand position is causing more drag, I go to Florida, I test it, I do it several times. I do it where we do 200 tests in 10 seconds. So I'm not just checking it once or twice, but I have a statistically significant number of tests that make me confident that the data is accurate. But I don't want to wait 3 months to have somebody approve it, some peer review committee approve a paper that gets published next year. If I get the information out today,
may not even know anywhere near as much as you do.
Yeah, and if I get the information out today, I'm going to write about it tomorrow. It's going to be in our Aquanote, or soon. I haven't written about everything we did in our last study back in February. I was down in the Keys and we did a bunch of drag studies, and I haven't written about every single one of them, but most of them I've put out already. And if people want to know, what have you studied lately and what are you doing? All they have to do is go on our website and get to the Aquanotes, and they'll read about it, or go on our news feed and say, Dr. Hall, what do you think of this hand position? I measured that.
What is that? What is that web page? Is it theraceclub.com?
It's theraceclub.com. And if you go there and you go on newsfeed, and you have to be a Lane 1 member, but it's free. So all you have to do is put your email address in there. And then you can read all the comments in the newsfeed. You can get all the Aquanotes in there. The Aquanotes, almost all of them are free. And I think there's 300 articles I've written.
You also did, and I mentioned this before, you did 2 shows on FINA, if I'm right, so far. And if you want to see more about, what some of the presentations, your son, I believe, did the video work, which was absolutely beautiful, and then did some animations on there. If you go to learning.fina.org, you can see those presentations you made. Then you can come over and how would they, if somebody wanted to work with you, you have 2 locations, is that right?
We have 2 locations, one in Isla Mirada, Florida, in the Keys, which was our original location. And I'm now in Coronado, which is right outside of San Diego.
Right.
It's right over the bridge. I'm looking at downtown San Diego. So here, you're
beautiful view there.
It's a beautiful view. 15 minutes from the airport to the pool, which has 6 blocks. I ride my bike to the pool here. And then in Islamorada, it's a bit of a trip. You get to Miami, you got to drive. It's a beautiful drive in the Keys. A great place to go. It's about an hour and a half to go from the airport down to the Keys. But either location, Coach Devin Murphy is in Florida all the time. I'm here. And we do three things. We either do private instruction, camps, which we run about 10 a year in each location. Some of them are specific, like we have one camp that is focused on just starts and turns in each location, or two. The rest of them are 4-day camps. That one's a 2-day camp. And then the rest of the time, it's either private instruction or online coaching. And the online coaching is relatively new. We started that about 2 years ago. And Devin and I have clients all over the world that we coach online. We do 2 30-minute video sessions a month. And in those, we review videos of their races or their technique in training or in the backyard pool, or we talk about goals, or we set workout schedules for them. We try to shore up any weaknesses we can. Some of them I've never actually ever seen, in person. Mm-hmm. I have 2 or 3 clients in Asia, Australia, or New Zealand that I've never actually coached on deck with.
Now, Gary, when you do those camps and Devin does those camps, and Devin's outstanding as well, right? Otherwise, I'm guessing he wouldn't be working with you. So let me ask you a question. Are you guys on the deck with the swimmers and working with those swimmers?
Yeah, we are. And they're technique-focused camps. They're not training camps. We do have one training camp that we offer a year in each location, but the majority of our camps, and even those, we can't help ourselves. We're correcting technique all the time. And then in addition, when you come for either of those camps or privates, we offer those 3 or 4 different tests in addition, that if you want to take a deeper dive, if you really want to know more about what you're doing right or wrong, then there's just a limit you can see from the deck. And we think we're pretty good. That's what you do. That's what I do. We have a good eye. We're observers. But I'm telling you, John, as long as I've done it, and you've done it longer than I have, you can't see. Things happen really quickly. When you start to see the level of detail that you pick out of these tests, and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't see that, or I didn't realize they were doing that. It's pretty incredible what we can get out of those tests. So we offer those tests, additionally, when you come here. If you want them, you don't have to have them, but they're there for anybody who wants.
Yeah, you can see a lot underwater. You can see, we're actually, the next FINA presentation that I'm doing, I've got a couple more coming up. One, the first one is on the feel for the water, which we're going to be helping to define clearly so everybody can understand what the field really means and how it functions. And then the next one after that is going to be on the brain and harnessing emotion. And we're going to be looking at these 2 different aspects, and we have it all animated and things like this. But I think the ability that you have to dig in, and what we call slippage, right, in the water, where somebody like kind of pulls their hand this way, you could see that type of thing, even though technique all looks like it's connecting and things like that, and you've got all the boxes checked. But then all of a sudden, if you look at somebody might be slipping, then immediately from underwater, you can see that type of thing, right?
You can not only see it with underwater, but if you do the velocity, you can quantitate the mistake. You can see how much the velocity dropped or the deceleration occurred as a result of losing their grip or hold on the water. With a pressure meter, you can actually measure the force, and you can see when the force diminishes when their hand slips in or slips up. They lose their hold on that water. And now we measure it. We don't just look at it and say, oh, it looks like you're slipping. We know how much you slipped and how much it cost you in terms of.
And you can see the loss of return, right, when you do slip.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow.
And it's not just the amateur swimmers that are a problem. We videoed Olympians and tested Olympians and see them making mistakes as well. So every swimmer at every level is making mistakes.
Yeah, and right, exactly. So nobody's perfect, and everybody, right? We were taught that you can always be better. You'll never be perfect. Keep digging in. I'm learning even a lot more on this show about what you guys do, and it's fantastic. I want to thank you for joining us, Gary, and hopefully at some point in the near future we can do it again to really look at some of the more aspects that you're digging into.
Well, thank you, John. I love what I do. I know you do too. And that's one of the great things in life. If you can find something you love, you're passionate about, and still make a living doing it, that's a pretty cool thing.
You put a lot in, you got a lot back, and now you're still giving back. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
All right.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too.